Good afternoon, and welcome to Founders and Funding. I'm Alex, your host for today. My background is I've been an operator, I've been in professional services, and I'm an ecosystem builder. So I've been at companies that have grown and had exits of hundreds of millions of dollars. I've been at companies that have grown and not exited. I've seen ecosystems in New York, Toronto, San Francisco, and London. And I believe what we have in Canada is truly special, and we can grow a huge ecosystem. That's one reason I co-founded TechTO, and that's one reason we bring you multiple different live streams. In particular, the goal of Founders and Funding is to get to the truth behind what happens as a founder, what happens with the funders, and provide a real, authentic view from both perspectives. Because today you can go read tons of blogs, you can watch tons of videos, and they're usually one opinion. And what we try to do with this live stream is get people from different backgrounds to share the unvarnished truth. So that's what we're going to go through today a bit later in a few minutes. And I'll tell you a bit of lay of the land. But first, I would like to get Liz up from SalesRight.
Hi, Alex. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. You guys had some big news yesterday.
We did have some very topical big news that was dropped yesterday. SalesRight has been acquired by FastSpring to support the next generation of software e-commerce. So we're really excited to share the news with this audience. We love being a part of these events, and we want you all to hear the news from us. So Anna's going to drop the link in the chat to go read all the details. But the long story short is that together we'll be delivering a unified software e-commerce solution for B2C and B2B businesses. FastSpring is super aligned with SalesRight's vision to support sales teams and to support e-commerce. So we're so excited for this chapter and to see everything develop from here. As always, if you have questions about SalesRight quotes or about anything that we offer, you can reach us on LinkedIn or on our website or on our social media. And I know that Anna's going to be making sure all those links are in the chat. We love chatting with this audience. And thank you for all the wonderful events that we've had in 2020. And we're excited to go from here as part of this chapter.
One important question. You guys started out of Atlantic Canada. You've been bought by, I guess, a Bay Area company. So are we going to now get more employment in the Bay Area, in Atlantic Canada? Are we going to start growing a presence and make it more Canadian?
Well, I know that the Halifax team where we're based out of is going to remain a Halifax team.
Excellent.
As far as what goes from here, I'm on the marketing side of things. So I cannot say what I do not know, but I know that we're really excited to be representing Halifax as part of this organization. So FastSpring has an office in California, and they have an office in Amsterdam, and now they have an office in Halifax. So we're really excited to join that system.
Well, conveniently located between the two other locations. Everyone just has to stop by when we can travel again. Thanks so much for supporting us, and congratulations on the news.
Thank you so much.
Great. Before I call up Michael Hyatt, just a few rules of how we work. To the side, there's an emoji cannon. Use it to express your opinion and provide some nonverbal feedback. Like right now, I'd love everyone just to try clapping. So show signs of support for this event. And second of all, just beside that, we have a chat bar. So if you have any questions, you want to, you're hearing the conversation, you want some additional information, some clarification from Michael, just put the question there and I'll try to weave it in. And then finally, after the conversation's done, if you want to stick around and meet other community members, we will be having a networking session that goes for about 15 minutes to 1 o'clock. We'll put you up for 3 minutes with random people from the community. And the goal is not to pitch yourself, not to be out there selling, but to actually learn from someone else and see how you can help someone else, see what you can learn about what else is going on in our great tech community. Now I'd like to get to today's main event. I'd like to really welcome Michael to the stage. And I'm actually super honored to have you here, Michael. Like, I don't think, Canada's, Toronto's starting to be recognized as a great place to be starting a tech company and a great tech ecosystem, but it wouldn't be there without you. Like, just your list of accomplishments is great. You funded you started two companies and sold both of them. You helped launch a CDL out of Toronto. You represent us on the pitch, and it seems like you're everywhere these days and promoting yourself, but also promoting Canada. So thank you so much for spending time with us. Oh, can't hear you. You're on. I think you're muted.
See how tech savvy I am? You sure you want me on this? Yeah. Thanks for having me. And I was also excited to hear that the last speaker was out east. I lived in Nova Scotia for a few years when I was growing up, and I can't say enough good things about it. It's such a wonderful place. But it's a place where people will shovel people's driveways just because your neighbors.
It happens in Toronto. I don't know whereabouts you live, but
I don't know. I think they try to arrest you for that here, but try it.
they might try to fine you.
Sure.
The
Yeah,
city needs
probably.
money now. So let's start. Give us a bit of background. What did you do before you actually started your first tech company?
Oh, look, I came right out of school. I was at Western. I was going to Western because I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I was in Western for biochemistry. It was the only university that took me. And I remember giving my fourth year pitch in biochemistry to these professors. And I gave this big pitch about something arcane like X-ray crystallography and organic chemistry. And they just looked at me like those judges on Flashdance, you know, with a male, pale, and stale kind of glasses on their nose. And they just watched me in bizarreness for 30 minutes. And at the end of it, they said, Mr. Hyatt, you should go sell cars. You should leave Western. So they didn't even want me for the master's program. They're like, you know, out you go. So I started a software company in the 90s with my brother. And it was so bizarre to start a software company there now. I try to tell people, look, the internet was just coming alive. There was no Wi-Fi. There was no network. There was nothing cool like this. There was no ecosystem. There was no very little venture capital. There was no community. It was just, you know, you would actually save your software to something called a disk. And at the end of the day, you go to the post office and mail your disk to people. You call them 3 days later and say, did you get my disk? And can you put it in your computer? And try to convince them to buy your software.
So
that's how it was.
I remember those days. And then you paid for the update, you didn't pay monthly for the software either.
Yeah, you paid for us to mail you more disks. Yeah.
Tell us, so you left Western. How, you know, was it, whose idea was it? What was the idea, and how did you decide to work with your brother? Like, you know, that's pretty bold. If I worked with my sisters, I'd probably be thrown out in 2 minutes of the house.
You know, so here's the thing about working with siblings. If you can make it work, and it's an incredibly powerful company, because, okay, think about your best friend. Let's get together with your best friend, start a company, and then you get into a brutal fight, which you always do starting a company. And then you get into this brutal fight and you call each other horrible names. I mean, the worst names. A couple of days later, you phone them up. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean it. I was heated. And you say, okay, we're back together. Try that with a sibling. And then what happens is, like, 2 hours later, you're like, sorry about that. You're even more together back in like 2 hours. Like, with your sibling, you can do brutal things, and building a company can be brutally hard. And the resiliency of that DNA, of that blood, is so strong, it can't be broken, I don't think, or it's very hard to break it. So it can be very powerful. And Richard is this genius developer. Like, he was better than 100 developers together. And then there was me, and I could sell, and we just kind of squeezed our brains together, and he developed and I sold, and that's how it happened. You know, I mean, and siblings is the best thing in the world, but it's the worst thing in the world if it doesn't work. Like, I find it, I take it quite personally when I feel very sad when I see epic Canadian families fight, you know, because I'm just like, you know, is it worth it? Like, what are we really talking about here? It's sad when I see that.
Well, I love your thesis, but I'd also say you have a very strong relationship with your brother, because I don't think many siblings can get through that. So, but like, take us back to the first company. So you left Western. How did you come up with the idea? How do you know this was worth pursuing? Because I think no matter what's changed, I think for all founders, that's always a question. Like, how do I find the right idea? Should I be investing in it? Should I be doing it? So how do you get the confidence around that? How do you source the idea?
Look, my brother had dropped out of U of T, and my dad said to him, look, if you're going to stay at home and do nothing, you're going to work. So my dad was a chemical engineer. He convinced my brother to write software for chemical engineers to help document how not to blow up chemical plants. And we built the world's first Windows-based, and this was 95, 96. Windows was coming of age, right? I mean, remember before they had DOS and you had WordPerfects and all that kind of command line stuff. And we had this amazing GUI at the time. You call it UX, but back then you call it a GUI. And it looked amazing, this interface of this Windows-based software. My dad forced my brother to code for him to do risk assessment. I just come out of university. So I would dial for dollars, and my brother would code, and my dad would be the product manager. And we just kind of like all lived in the same house. And since the internet wasn't really around, our first office address was 13 Crystal Drive, Suite 2. So it sounded like we were in an office, but it was really the bedroom upstairs. Because, and I can't tell you how weird it was to call the United States, and they go, where are you calling from? You say, Canada. And they'd be like, Canada? Like, I just said, you know, New Zealand or Iceland, because it was just like this, what is Canada? And I can't tell you how amazing it must be when you see now I'm from Toronto, every American in business is like, yeah, Toronto, love Toronto. Oh yeah, a lot of things come to Toronto and Ottawa,
But
it wasn't like that then. It was bizarre. You calling from Canada.
I'd argue they're still they know Toronto, but they're still intrigued by it. But most of them don't believe what's going on here till they come here.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely incredible. And I'm so proud of our city and our country. We've come of our own, and we have some incredible companies. And I think there's no better time to start a company now than now. I just think that we're on the precipice. It's just something, this digital transformation. And I think Canada is a wonderful place to start and build a company. I think you can be Canadian and you can stay in Canada, but I think you should think a little more American, lean in and be a little more aggressive like our cousins down there, because they really know how to build businesses. I think we have to think a little more American and be Canadian with our values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to go double click on this. I want to go back to your story eventually, but so why Canada now? Why Toronto now? And then what have you learned that we do wrong that we should be more like Americans?
Toronto, okay. For the past 20, 25 years, all I ever hear is, are we going to beat the Valley? Are we going to beat the Valley? And all this stuff. Well, first off, the Valley has 25 years on us. And it's not just 25 years. It's almost exponential years. Like, it is, when I ever go to the Valley, I get more done sometimes in a couple of weeks of meetings there than I do in years here. I mean, it's incredible. I don't think our job is to catch up with the Valley or be like them. I think we can be like us. And I would say we've done things really well. Like, for example, I think the progression and the jumps we've had in AI, let's say around a lot of the stuff you've seen at UFT, the Creative Destruction Lab, a lot of the stuff you've seen with Jeff Hinton and some of the godfathers of AI, I think we've started to see that here. I think we put ourselves on the map with some epic companies like Shopify. I think we've started to prove that we have the talent and the people and we can be something. We have the digitization here. We have this incredible corridor between Waterloo and Toronto. We have a lot of great stuff. We've seen Microsoft and a lot of companies come here and they've been doing this for 15 years, just hire straight out of Kitchener, Waterloo, like suck all our talent. I would say the downfall to being Canadian is I think the American companies disproportionately get us. They get a lot of IP from this country, and they make it American. They take a lot of our IP and they've transferred it over because they're so big and powerful. And if you look at, you look at when Trudeau came into power, the first 10 phone calls he got were from Facebook, Google, Microsoft. It wasn't us. We weren't there. And they told us that to our face. They said, why didn't you call? I'm like, well, I'm not Microsoft. And, but they were explicit about that. So we do have a bit of an inferiority complex. Like, we get so impressed when one of those companies opens up here, right? Where you got to remember that they get us lovely Canadians in our brains and they want it. So sometimes I feel a little disappointed that we allow a little too much of that. But Canada's a great place. We have a lot of smart people. It's a great ecosystem. We have a great shred credit. We have a lower dollar. There's a whole bunch of economic reasons that kind of calculated in. We have a lot of talent, and this kind of new concept post-COVID of work from anywhere. Well, pretty good place, right?
So then, knowing now what you know about how Americans think of us and how Canadians act, how did that play out in either of your businesses? Like, did you have to compensate for that? You're a natural salesperson, you're aggressive, but did you find, how did you find your American competitors more aggressive? Like, how did you not be Canadian when you were for sales and try to expand your business?
So the greatest thing about building a company in Canada is that the largest economy in the world, we're sitting straight on top of them. They've got 3 hours of differential in time zones. They relatively speak one language, and it's a $20 trillion economy. If I was in Europe, I have to go to 27 countries to meet that economy size. And let's face it, let me just call it out. Canadians and Europeans don't buy things fast enough as Americans. So why are Americans so great? It's because they buy, and they buy big, and they buy fast. And if an American VC likes you, they put that check out there. And every Canadian knows that most American VCs early and back in the past 20 years have taken more risks than Canadians, and they'll buy into Canadian companies and they'll put a bigger check on the table, and there's more. And if you look at all the greatest business models and probably pretty much most of the greatest companies in the world, a lot of them are born out of this country and this ethos and these entrepreneurs and their ideas. I mean, the whole idea of recurring revenue and SaaS, that's all American. It was, I think back in the day, Salesforce and Taleo, the first two companies to ever go public on that, right? So those business models are developed there, and America just thinks more aggressively than us and leans in more than us. And a difference typically between an American and Canadian company of the past 25 years is that the American company goes whole hog all in. I mean, you'll talk to a number of people watching this right now that have raised 2 to 5 million in a vertical.
Yeah.
Their competitors, I guarantee, have raised 50 to 100. And that is a normal thing that we see.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes the 2 to 5 million company, but they'll probably won't have multi-billion-dollar exits, but they'll have really good exits. But I mean, there's an order of magnitude differential on how Canadians and Americans seem to go after the same pie.
So do you think that's an issue? Like going back to funding, like from what I understand, I don't think either of your companies raise a bunch of outside financing, if any. So it's interesting to hear you talk about how we have a sort of a disadvantage with venture capital or mindset there, but you didn't need it. So how did you get by without raising money? And when should you take venture capital?
We just didn't raise. We stayed in the majority in our companies, which was the rare thing. So because capital does build companies, you can raise capital. You should raise capital. There are some. Look, here's one of the problems. There are so many VCs and so many private equity firms. It has so much more to do with the actual partners that you get to sit on your board and the people you want to work with. And think of it like this. It's a bit of a marriage. So if you take money from a VC, don't focus on the brand. Focus on the actual partner who's going to sit on your board. And are you okay to get married to them for 10 years? And what are they like in their bad days? And did you do reference checks? Did you call 5 entrepreneurs they've invested in? And what are they like on their bad days? And how do you build that relationship with those VCs? I would say that you're seeing successively bigger rounds in Canada. You're seeing great exits in Canada. Like I was thrilled to see Verafins yesterday, because the more big exit we get, the more we get on the map, and exits beget more capital, and it's this kind of virtuous cycle. And one thing people have to understand, Canadians, the more we sell into big numbers, the more capital that'll get reapplied, and the whole circle will keep going. Look at what's happening on the TSX. There is a lineup of new companies coming on, a bunch of them tech, right? So we're seeing for the first time, what was the TSX for how many years? Mining, gold, and boring. You had the base. Yeah, the banks see a bunch of gold stocks and people trying to find diamonds out and so-and-so. Now we're seeing some great stuff, right? With some great Canadian companies that are coming out right now. There have been some great listings, and there's a pipeline of them. So there's a lot of good stuff happening. And what entrepreneurs should know now in Canada is that there's tremendous amount of capital flow starting to move in. So what's the world that we're sitting in right now? As you're watching this, we're in kind of negative real interest rates. So what does that mean? Interest rates are the price of money, and the price of money is exceedingly cheap. It's at a 200-year low. And that money needs to get some velocity. So if I'm a pension fund, I'm a private equity company, I'm trying to put money out, I need it to go somewhere productive. And you're seeing it basically when interest rates are so low, basically what the Fed is telling you is buy stocks, buy into productive assets. So you're going to see a constant flow to where productive assets are. And I would make the argument that there's more and more productive assets being built in Canada now than ever before in tech. And it's very, very exciting.
So I want to take a step back. And we're talking about capital, we're talking about exits, but I think there's a lot. I think founders don't understand how hard it's to get there. I think you built one company, Diadem, was sold for 100 million, and then Bluecat sold for 400 million, but neither of them happened overnight. So tell us the truth. Like, how do you get there? How do you get to an exit? Give us some highlights or lowlights from building either one of those companies and the challenges that you didn't expect, or most founders wouldn't expect.
Being a founder is an extremely lonely thing. And I think being a CEO and a founder is, the younger you are, the harder it is. I remember being a CEO at 24 and a bunch of my employees were 27. Seems a lot older back then. And I come out to the picnic table, and as soon as I walk out, everything goes quiet. And you don't get invited to the parties. And there's this separation that's very hard to take, because I just wanted friends. I was 24. I was this young, cool guy. I wanted, it was very hard learning. I think most people should not be entrepreneurs. I think most people should take a paycheck between the 15th and 30th of the month. I think being an entrepreneur is a exceedingly lonely, difficult task. I think that it's highly unlikely that you'll get an exit. I think that we glorify it. I think that we aren't really prepared for being in it for 10 years. And if look, if you're starting a company today and you're not in it in your mindset for 10 to 15 years, then you're not thinking reality. I mean, most of the entrepreneurs you're going to have on this show have been in their business 10 to 15 years to exit. And that's a long time. People think, well, I'll sell my company in 3 years to Google. I don't think so. That may happen, but really for everybody else on that curve, you're in it for 10 to 15 years, and you're in it for a lot of sacrifice. And the sacrifice is addictive.
It's addictive.
Because what happens is that you tell yourself, like, you start off by saying something, you know what, if I can build this and make 5 million, that's good. You get to there and you go, oh, look at that hill. I'm going to get to 10. Then you get to that $10 million hill and you get, oh, there's a 20 hill. And then you just keep successively moving up hills. So you start to realize, why am I keep going up hills? But you just, as an entrepreneur that got you there, you can't stop. It's harder to stop than it is to start. And you kind of force feed yourself and you keep going. And then you start sacrificing everything else in your life, right, for these successive hills.
And as someone that's done this twice, how do you deal with the sacrifice? How do you make that trade-off? Like, what's the mental math, and how do you prepare yourself? Because did you have a support system? You were working with your brother, so imagine both times. So imagine you could go shoot the shit with him on a weekend, say, this is, what are we doing? But like, so how do you do those trade-offs? Because you twice you've taken 2 exits. So at one point you said, I guess the sacrifice is enough, and we've proven enough. And then when you're making those sacrifices, what do you do yourself to survive?
There's only 3 things I consistently did to survive, and I'm not even kidding about this: diet, sleep, and exercise. I would keep I'm telling every entrepreneur out there that if you don't get very serious about diet, sleep, and exercise, you're in a lot of trouble. You need to work out or try to just walk everywhere, for example, as much as you can. That's why I live in the annex in Yorkville, because it forces me to walk everywhere. Now I'm not walking anywhere because I'm quarantined. But, do you sleep 7 hours a night? Maybe 8, maybe 6, whatever. If you're sleeping 3, it's a problem. Are you, what are you eating? You should just eat regular good food. If you find yourself doing Uber Eats 3 times a week, I think it's a problem. Like, I think that physically you have to be ready for this journey. It is a very, very taxing journey. The younger you are and the less committed you are, the easier it is. If you aren't married and you don't have a child or 2 kids or 3 kids, it's exponentially easier to make mistakes. My advice to all the young entrepreneurs watching this right now, if you're between the ages of 20 and 30, you have that critical 10 years to try to get somewhere, because I will tell you, between 30 and 40 is harder. In 40 to 50, I don't know how you're going to do it. Like, you've got to do all the sacrifice between 20 and 30, and brutally, because you should go out there and fail, make mistakes, crash the bus, be wrong or whatever. But it's great time, because if you became a multimillionaire by 33, you're still really young, and you should do. But it's biologically harder the later you go on, and it's harder to commit because life, gets you an old mortgage. You got a car, you got a kid. It's harder to just say, you know what, let's just put all our life savings into this. And, we got a child. You can't, so you can't make those decisions later on the way you think you can now. You have bigger things in your life. So what you need to do is really consider that 10 years is kind of exponentially more important than the future.
I love that, because I think we're all a bit naive when we're younger, not realizing what the sacrifices you'll have to make down the road. Like you, I have a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old at home, and could not see myself doing what I did when I was 20 at this point. And then second part of that question, how do you know when it's time to stop going for the next hill? What you've sold twice now, and I think sometimes founders either can sell too early or can sell too late. When's the right time to sell, and how do you know it's time to basically let someone else take your baby?
Sold both the companies is it's a little bit of a nuance, but actually I'm still on the board of Bluecat and I'm still a significant shareholder, but I sold the majority. But the point is that I felt that another owner should take it over, because I did it for long enough. And I tell everybody in the company that everybody has their limits, including me. And when I got to a certain part about Bluecat, and a company approached us and they said, listen, we want to buy your company and this is what we're going to pay, I thought to myself, well, you know what? If I move to the side, sell them the majority of my company, and I can take a ride for the rest and just be a good partner, that's better for me, and it's better for the other employees. It's better for the other shareholders. because my heart after so long wasn't in it anymore at the same level. I owe it to the staff. I owe it to the shareholders. At some point, you make a broader decision, and you should always ask yourself, am I the right person to be hired for this job anymore? And at some point of all your companies, I'm not, and somebody else is. And so if I try to tell people in my executive team to be self-aware about that, I have to be self-aware about that as well. So I think we all have to be. You all outrun your companies. I mean, let me make look, some of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world, like Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, they outlived Microsoft, and Microsoft did nothing for 10 years. Suddenly Satya comes in and moves up 10x. I would argue that the best thing they ever did was move away from their company, and they actually got ridiculously richer when that happened, because they decided to step back and let somebody else take a perspective and bring Microsoft to the cloud, for example. That's a broad example, but every company at some time, either the founder can keep going or the founder moves to the side at some point. You got to know your limitations.
So that takes a lot of self-awareness, and maybe Ballmer and Gates didn't know that they're past their prime for their company. How do you get that self-awareness?
Successful, they have nothing to prove, but from a shareholder-based perspective, you make a commitment to your people, and at some point you have to make a commitment, and stick to that commitment. If you're asking your head of marketing to think like that, or your sales to think like that, a lot of entrepreneurs watching this right now have let people go because they just can't get to the next level. That marketing person can't take them to the next level. Well, who says you can, right? Yeah, it's a self-awareness thing. It's I think Jim Collins stages people at a level 4 or 5 leader and good to great.
Yeah,
I think that's the distinction he made.
Cool. I'm going to take a few we're getting lots of questions from the audience. I'm going to take a few in right now. One from Kyle. He wants to know, how do you know when you have product market fit? How did you know, actually explicitly, would love to know what went into product market fit at Bluecat. And from your perspective, what was the most challenging part of the journey at Bluecat?
That you need to understand about product fit is that it's not me, it's not your board, it's not your investors, and it's not you. You're not the decider of your product. Your clients are. Your clients have a purchase order list this long every quarter of what they can buy. And you need to be able to make the top gap. And you're not competing against other companies just in your space. You're competing against everything else they could purchase. And the decider of the product fit is whether you get allocated budget for what you're doing. At the end of the day, dogs have to eat dog food and people have to drink champagne. If that's not happening, you don't have it. There are so many smart people that have built products that are hunting around looking for the problem to fit. I see it all the time. The greatest companies you would imagine started because they built something because they couldn't find it. I mean, that Uber was created because he couldn't get a taxi, so he gave one guy a BlackBerry. It was a BlackBerry back then. And his friends started saying, hey, where's your BlackBerry driver? Where's your BlackBerry driver? Right? People were counting him for that evening at 12 p.m. for their BlackBerry driver. And so he made it a broader BlackBerry driver thing. It was like, Uber in its very first intonation, I think, was something, and all great companies pivot, by the way, and all great founders know how to pivot, but he did, and he basically made it was like a black car only. I think it was the very, very, very first thing with that BlackBerry. But I mean, you should have demand early, and you are not the decider. The decider are the buyers.
Interesting. And how did you know you had a Bluecat?
We had people buying our DNS boxes because they desperately needed them. I mean, that was it. They were the deciders, and we listened to them.
I love that answer. Pierre asked a similar question. He says, first of all, say hi to Michael. So said hi for Pierre. But what's the biggest mistake you've ever made? And Kyle actually asking what's the biggest challenge. So if you look back in your career, what can you pinpoint one challenge or mistake?
Yeah. All the biggest mistakes I ever made as an entrepreneur were hiring, and all the best things I ever did was hiring. Every time I made a great hire, they were free. All A players are free. All great hires are free. It doesn't matter what you pay them. Didn't matter. All great hires. Don't get wrapped up in what you pay somebody. You pay a sales guy or girl $300,000. If they bring you $3 million, shut up. You're fine. It doesn't really matter. All the bad things that ever happened to me was because I hired the wrong person, and it just was a wrong fit, and I got past our sensors, right? But you know what? You should admit your mistake early and rotate that person out.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up question there, because I think one problem I've seen with lots of Canadian founders is they're worried to pay the dollars they need for those executives. And, they're like, well, people here get paid, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000. This executive's coming out of Utah and she wants 600,000, which is insane. How do you help founders get over this? And how do you know, yeah.
100,000 to 600. I think you have to bridge things with equity on performance, but if it all comes down to what they can do for you and how much they move the needle, start looking at it prospectively. There's nothing wrong with paying leaders $200,000-300,000 and giving them the equity upside, or show them how to make, that person from Utah, for example, show them how to make 5 million on an exit, but paint them the picture, get them to come on your journey. The biggest thing one of the big things that a founder needs to do is to get really good people to go with them on a journey, right? And leaders bring armies. And here's another thing you should think about. If you hire an A player, they're really not an A player unless they bring 2 or 3 other A players with them to your company. So if you hire a sales leader, if they bring nobody to your company, nobody follow them to your company, I guarantee they're not a sales leader. Because sales leaders, by definition, should be bringing account executives with them who will do anything to work with them blindly, not even knowing what your company name is. All A players have people follow them blindly, and you'll never know what kind of A player you are or not, until you go somewhere and will people just blindly follow you.
I love that, because then you're really not only hiring one person, you're hiring a team. One last question from a founder perspective. What did you wish you knew before you became a founder?
I knew all the stuff that some really great HR people taught me about how to bring the company together, really understand the heartbeat of the company. I was just so much into sell. And I kind of ignored everything to put all the energy into that engine. And, I would say there's the great head of HR, Cheryl Kernigan, was just fabulous and taught me a ton about, how to bring that together. And other HR people did it too, to teach me how to, I learned how to really understand anonymously how the company was thinking. And I could have done that better and earlier, and I think I would have made more money.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And why is that so important?
There's nothing but culture. A company is just a combination of great people doing a great thing. There is nothing else, right? Most people are there. Most people, sadly, are in companies from 9 to 5 and check out and slide down the dinosaur and honk like, the thing on the Flintstones, Bronto served burger home. You got to be old to understand that cartoon. But, the fact that people check in and check out of your company is your fault. It's not their fault. You haven't built the machine properly. You haven't done your job. You haven't brought them together. You haven't got them to row in the same place. Leaders bring armies. You go back 2,000 years, people followed people into death, into war, because they believed in the leader. People jumped over trenches into machine gun fire for their leaders. Leaders bring armies, and will people follow you up a hill? Do people believe in why you're going somewhere? Simon Sinek, I think, wrote that book, First Ask Why, or something like that. It is brilliant. But the point is that, have you given people a reason to follow you up a hill or not? Like, why, where are you going? Why are you going in that? Like, why should I follow you? Why should I put my life's blood, my 20s to 30s and my 30s to 40s? Why should I give my life's blood to you? Like, it's got to be more than money. We all know it logs out at a certain number. You have to get people to buy into your life energy and where you're taking the company and why. What mission are we on? And I think people get so wrapped up in selling. And of course, I did when I was younger. I didn't realize that why question was probably more important, because humans are all the same. We want a certain amount of autonomy and freedom and thought around that question.
Cool. I love that. Yes, yeah, it's bringing out the most of the team and actually getting them to buy into the ultimate vision. I'm going to flip the questions a bit, because you've been a successful entrepreneur, but over the last few years, being much more active in helping other entrepreneurs by giving advice at CDL, or by investing. You're on the pitch. So what do you look for when you meet with a founder? If you're going to write a check for her, what gets you excited? What are you looking to do? Is it just the money? Are you looking, just tell me your thinking process there.
First off, I have to feel like I like them, and I feel like I have to be working with them for 10 years. That's a lot of commitment. I have to put money into your company get married to you for 10 years, answer 400 phone calls, probably 200 coffees, probably Sunday evenings when I don't want to take a call, Zooms. And now I have to commit my lifeblood to this. I have to like you. I also have to believe that you will pivot and you will listen. There's only two types of founders: self-aware founders who listen, and generally smart founders that think they know better. And you have to sit back and watch the bus go into the accident and go, okay, now that you're in this accident, can we have a conversation? I don't like being in those situations. I've been in investments like that, and the problem is, sorry, you can hear my 1-year-old.
That's fine.
Over here, but the issue really kind of comes down to, can you get a self-aware founder to understand that they need to pivot and take feedback? One of my great investments past couple of years, I invested in a 22-year-old who was a student at the CDL, who wasn't even in the CDL. And I think the only person to back a student at the CDL, and the company went gangbusters. It's done incredible. But what I love about him and his brother is that they listen to me and we debate. And sometimes I say I'm wrong. Sometimes he says he's wrong. But we've made it so far in having an honest relationship. And I look for great people, great markets, but I'm looking for your ability to, take feedback, pivot, think about it, because all great companies pivot.
So I think I know which brothers you're talking about. They do have a great company. So I love that you want to spend time with them. That you have to know that they're smart and willing to pivot. Is there anything else? Is there any sectors you like? And what's your commitment to them? It seems like you're like their first call or like their coach. So do you care what they're building? And then what commitment do you make to them when you write that check?
That they text me, I text right back. I put them on priority, and I commit to the company, and I'm committing to an endless marriage, which is I don't know what we're going to sell, but I also commit to this. If you want to sell your company tomorrow, I'll support you. If let's say I get into your company at a $8 million valuation, and 2 years from now you want to sell it at 20, okay, I thought it could go further, but if you want to do that, I'll support you. I'm not here to tell you, no, you got to go to 50 because I want it. At the end of the day, I'm backing them. It is my job to get along with you to make your path. I'm not here just for my own return. I am here for return, but if that entrepreneur says, I'm going to 200 no matter what, I'm like, okay, I'll go on that journey with you. Like the brothers, Mark and David Yang at Second Clause, we just spoke about, is like, they have a commitment to this big thing. And I'm just like, okay. And it looks like they're going to do it. And I think that I'm okay for that. But I've always said to Mark, I say, Mark, if you want to get off the bus, like we're doing another round coming up, and I'm just like, we can get off the bus if you want. And he's like, nope, bus, keep going. I'm like, okay, so I'm in for that bus. But I'm also okay if he doesn't want to get on that bus. But do you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel it's my job to create a self-determination. And at the end of the day, founders must have a self-determination, whether that they step aside as a CEO, they take the company to exit, or what. But they need to be self-aware where they want to go with their lives.
So I love that. They decide where the bus is going, but you're there as a coach. So how do you know enough about the business to help them determine when it's to go pivot? Do they realize it has to go pivot and they bring that up with you, or are you from you have a sort of an outsider in perspective? You can say, hey, something doesn't look like it's going right here. Let's talk about what we can do to improve the business.
Entrepreneurs I work with, you'll find out that I have very candid early conversations with them. I drill into the math. I love math. I love, you see where they're going. I sometimes I feel a little bit bad because sometimes I'm so candid. I become too New York, and I have a home in New York in Manhattan. Sometimes I feel like I become that. I get a little too. Sometimes if I were to critique myself, I could be a little too blunt and candid. Like I go straight like a heat-seeking missile to the issue, and I keep pressing on it until it hurts. But I also believe as Canadians, sometimes we beat around the bush, and candid is kindness. And I just want to tell you, look, if we keep doing this, it's going to be very painful. Listen to me, and sometimes it gets like that. And sometimes I have to do this. Like literally, I had to do that 2 days ago. I mean, it's somebody think, oh, Mike, you're over the top, but like I have to, which I am, but I'm like, I've seen this rodeo, and it ain't pretty,
Yeah,
so.
that's the flip side of being a bit older than 20. You've seen a few rodeos.
pandemic and without government aided support, we'd be at an unemployment rate in the 30s. We're like far past the Great Depression. We're at a time right now where, yeah, a lot of great things can happen, but I have to remind you, as you and I are having this conversation, our premier is talking about shutting down the whole province and maybe the country. Yeah. And this is not good things. We're hoping for a vaccine. We're hoping there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat that needs to happen right now. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of probably mental anxiety, people getting cooped up. Winter is literally coming. There's some hard things to work through right now for all companies. Everybody is under pressure right now. And it's a very difficult time. But I will tell you, I absolutely believe we're going to get through this. And I absolutely believe that this will be a kind of just a blemish, and years from now, remember that time we had to wear masks. I believe we get past this.
Yeah, well, I think that's an optimist. The optimist, entrepreneurs are optimists and investors are optimists. So I believe we'll get past this too. The one concern I have is what impact does it have on kids? Because they've been socialized differently for a year.
Fine. And I think about that all the time. My younger brother has 3 kids. My older brother has 4 kids. And like I have a 14-month-old, she just turned 14 months today. And we're a little bit panicked because we want her to go play with other kids. Like we want her to get out, and share and all this kind of stuff. And, her best friend is, our nanny. It's like, my good. It's like, we need a child to come in and talk to our child, and, I don't think this goes on for 4 years. I think that the vaccine settles the score this year in 2021. But I am very optimistic in the sense that we as people get past things. Yes. And I'm sure there are plenty of times in human history, including the pandemic 100 years ago, that we got through with absolutely nothing that we had now. It was just like, and believe me, the treatments of giving you mercury and all that other crap, they were wrong on that one. But our treatment's pretty good.
Well, thank God we're not giving mercury to people right now. Gonna give you back your time soon. One last question. What didn't I ask you that I should have? Because I feel like I could ask you questions for hours. And because you've seen both sides of building a company, you've been successful, you're an investor, you've been building this ecosystem. Or what piece of advice would you give to the 20 to 40-year-olds are listening right now?
A little bit at the moment perspective of, and by the way, you can verify this. I didn't hear any of these questions before, and all this is new. So I want to tell everybody that I actually asked you not to give me any questions beforehand. I like in the moment kind of speech. But what I wanted to communicate to everybody listening to this is something quite simple. If you had a business plan before March 2020, take it in this hand and just set it on fire. Just burn it, put it through the shredder, right? Because all of you need to pivot now. Let me just explain where we're at. And I want everybody to understand it. From kind of 2011 to 2020, it was peacetime, right? It was like I could raise money. After the last crash, by 2011, the world came back. If I went to sleep in 2009 and woke up in 2011, nothing had happened. I got past the last Great Recession. The past 10 years or so, raising capital, getting a meeting with a VC, getting debt has actually been very easy. In perspective, there's never been for the past 10 years an easier time to raise money and start a company in the past 10 years, ever. There's more capital formation. Interest rates are extremely low. It's the price of money. You can reach anybody on LinkedIn. There's been incredible IPOs, takeouts, growth. We've seen, just monstrous companies. We've seen $2 trillion companies. It's been euphoric. 2020 hits and literally, boom, it stops like that. Every one of you need to understand that with a shock like this to the system and what we've been forced at, the actual statistic, and at the Creative Destruction Lab, we looked at this, we've brought retail forward 10 years. So online retail has moved up literally, that's not just a talking point, it has moved up 10 years. And when a vaccine comes out and it's 99.5%, like brilliantly like that, and only because of the computing power we have now could we have ever done that. Let's say we all come back together. Bill Gates said yesterday, 50% of all business travel is going to be probably stopped because this kind of thing, I think we're okay with it now. We're okay with, I'd have to fly into New York, spend 3 days and put all these meetings together. I think I am going to fly to New York for a meeting, but I'm going to do more like this. So I think we're not going to go back. We're going to go somewhere back. What I'll say to you is that if the past quarter was good for you, then you're probably doing well. If you're still not doing well this past quarter, you need to pivot again and rethink things. If you have investors, over communicate with them, bring them into your process. If you have advisors, decide who are your best advisor or advisors, no more than 2 people, and really try to get deep and narrow with that advisor. Bring your board together. You should be having probably updates every 2 weeks. You should get on a cadence. You should be into this thing. I believe we're going to be at war through 2021. I believe we're going to be wearing masks through 2021. You have to be on a wartime footing. It's not a peacetime footing. But I do believe this is going to get dramatically better. And so many things are going to be better, because probably it would have been 8 years from now before my doctor would have just got on a Zoom and I could just show them my baby on a camera. Yeah. It was so easy. It's so easy to see a doctor now. I know I have to wait 8 years for that. So there's advantages. There's things that are better. But I just want everybody to know that that in no time in human history could we ever create a vaccine like this in lightning speed, and everything on warp speed. Its computing power is getting exponentially stronger still. The prediction machines that Ajay Agrawal and them talk about at the CVL is completely correct. It's working. And I believe in the next 5 years, there'll be a subset of companies, ones that have adopted AI and prediction machines and made those decisions better, ones that have not. If you're starting a tech company today, it's a great time to start a company. There's no better time to start a company than in the dearth. I think Shopify was started in 2009. Not a good time to start a company. I think Coca-Cola, way back in the 1800s, was started at a bad time. There's plenty of great companies that started in bad times. It's a great time to start a company now. Really, really think about how you can adopt AI into your business and make better decisions and faster decisions. Try to work with the smartest people you can, and try to bring a very, very few advisors. Sometimes I see people with like 9 advisors on their decks. I don't understand this. Just really focus on what you need to do. But if you haven't pivoted after March 2020, there's probably something wrong. You probably need to pivot your business somehow. Because even if you were selling masks and gloves, you pivoted. So that's the way it's going to be. But I could not be more bullish on Canada. I couldn't be more bullish on companies going forward. I don't see an epic crash coming. There might be some retracements. I see that, if we meet again in 3 and 5 years, I think the S&P is dramatically up. I think the cloud story is dramatically up. I think the security story is dramatically up. The AI story is dramatically up. And you're going to see more big exits like Verafin and what have you. I think this is all good. And I think it's no better time to be in this country or be in this space. So I would be very bullish if I was everybody, just kind of, leading into this. But 2021 is going to be an interesting, challenging year.
Michael, I appreciate that advice. I'm really glad you're helping build this ecosystem, because I'm optimistic like you, and I think this has never been a better time to be building something in Canada. And when someone can tap into your experience and your ability to sell, it's just another reason we're going to succeed. And I really appreciate your time today.
I wish everybody a lot of luck, and I think things can be great.
Thanks, Michael. Great. If you had a great time, share your experiences on LinkedIn or Twitter using the hashtag TechTO. Even better, put a quote that you like from Michael. Tell people where you heard about it. We'd really appreciate it. And if you really enjoyed this, we're going to be doing this again on December 4th with Jenny Fielding. She's the managing director of Techstars New York and the general partner of the fund. Both those are community-based investment vehicles. So it'll be great to get her perspective on what a community can do to help fund companies and also make them successful. We're going to drop the link into the chat right now so you can sign up for it ASAP. I think Leah will be posting it there. And if you love this and you're an early stage founder, we have even more hands-on engagement for you at TechTO. Check out our membership program to become a part of the TechTO Insiders. We have some cool insider-only content, like a weekly Perfecting Your Pitch, where we get founders to pitch their startup, get feedback on how they can make it a better sell, and how to get investors behind them. And lots of unfiltered feedback, and we do other stuff that we don't share with the wider community, because we want to make the insiders help each other win. Now, if you have some spare time and you want to network, we're going to open it up in a few minutes, and you can be here till 1:15, getting to know other people that participated today. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you take Michael's advice to heart. Either build your company, change it based upon what you've heard right now, or start building a company soon. Thanks.